Welcome to the audio experience of KimberlySueIverson.com, a redhead rewriting reality and multi-genre author. I am your host, Kimberly Sue Iverson, and today I'll be sharing with you a story that's close to my heart. If you prefer to read along or explore more stories, visit my website at KimberlySueIverson.com. This audio experience is for an adult audience. Themes and topics may not be appropriate or suitable for all audiences, so listener and viewer discretion is advised. Now, get yourself comfy as we dive into today's tale. Sofrir and Pheirgr of Atalantius Omega 3, Chapter 1, and Story Thoughts. Today I packed up my writing binders and the Holly Lyle course binders. I got rid of a lot of the paperwork for the other courses a while ago because I always said if I have to leave here, I don't want tons of stuff. The ones I kept were just the ones I use most, so didn't want to have to grab an electronic device to sort out the files. This past week has been rough still, not just from the foreclosure notice, but on the 27th of October, our other eldest dog passed away. I spent pretty well the entire day crying. I knew it was coming, but she went a bit faster than Chewbacca did. That evening of the 26th, she began acting a bit strange and would try to run around the room. Bear in mind she struggled to walk at that point. Well, around 8 p.m., she started to do these little howls here and there, and it was as if she was trying to get to some place that she couldn't, that she was seeing something that wasn't there. She wanted to reach it and was frustrated that she couldn't. The same behavior Chewbacca expressed. I stayed up as long as possible, but around 1 a.m. we finally crashed, and I brought her to the bed next to me. In the morning, I got her cleaned up, and the blanket I'd been using for her, same I'd done for Chewbacca, then went to deal with the other dogs, and when I came back, Kendra was gone. I think she was gone long before then. She wouldn't respond, and her eyes were glassy. She was still breathing slowly and quietly, but it was like she'd left, and it was just the body shutting down. Hopefully she and Chewbacca are now together. My brother and I knew she wouldn't last long after he passed. I think I said it on here too. She loved him too deeply. She was 15 and a half years old. We will miss you beyond words, Kendra. And that is all I'm talking about with her, or I may not make it through this post. I can barely do Chewbacca's post. Moving on. So because of that, I have nothing in mind to write, and thought I'd do another share of a chapter instead. This one is from the latest book I'd published, and the longest title on earth. I don't know what I was thinking making the title so long. I didn't expect to have to read it aloud, that's for sure. So this chapter share is from the Guardian of Life world. It is the 6th book in the world. Sofrir and Pheirgr of Atalantius Omega 3. They call us the suffering. We are their guides, and they are our shields. It had been a long, hard day of hunting Defalna. They were all exhausted, and Annika Dinsmore wanted to rest. Her feet and legs were killing her. Her head may as well go pop. Since she lived in the commune with the others, she wasn't looking forward to the ruckus that always followed. For the most part, it had been a good hunt. No matter how many Defalna the Pheirgr took out, It always seemed more came. That more were just around the corner, waiting to appear to try to kill them. The Pheirgr killed. The Sofrir were called upon to locate more. She was one of those Sofrir. A breeze shifted Annika's hair behind her. A welcome whisper of cool air, drying her neck. She scanned the bushes along the sidewalk while she plodded along, quietly smacking her lips. Could use some water. Nobody was near, so there was no asking if anyone had water to spare, and she didn't see any fountains. Not that one found would do her any good. Probably dried up around here anyway. Some of the old storefronts still had water dispensers, but not outside. The exterior fountains were left to dry, the pipes shut off. Conserve water and all. So far, nobody called on Annika. For that, she was grateful. Though, admittedly, there were times it made her feel left out. She wasn't always called upon because Minnie had issues with her. Oh, she heard what they called her behind her back, depending on who referred to her. Many of them had their own nicknames. Only a few individuals held respect for her. Others, not so kind. The Mist was one term. That nickname was decent enough. She didn't mind that one. Mostly it came from staying in the background, being silent, appearing out of nowhere, making an impact when she did. The one that hurt her was the one most used, the one they wanted to hurt her with. Scribd. Even saying it sounded like someone spit on her name. Scribd. May as well have cursed her name and spat on the ground. Undoubtedly they did behind her back, or when she wasn't looking. Annika could be reckless as far as they were concerned. It wasn't about her, so it only bothered her to a point. It was about saving the humans and preventing the hordes of Defalna from gaining control as it seemed they were. There were more of them daily, stronger, meaner. She was sensing it, feeling the increase in them. It made her sick to her stomach. Many nights she woke from anxiety flooding her in waves. So at the moment, she was by herself, wandering the long, empty, cracked pavement, once called a street. Now with dried old bits of plant life in the cracks. Up ahead was a closed-up former warehouse-type store. The buildings were tagged repeatedly by the group who last cleared them. They all used a specific tag. They tagged and dated after they checked it over. This one was recently marked clear. Every building or structure received multiple checks, and it never ended. Between each store lay vast open space, an undeveloped area they had plans for. Maybe a small building with a few homes would appear here and there. This area hadn't fully been developed, so it could have been many things. Trees and bushes about on either side. The occasional flutter of wings from rare bird. Animals learned long ago to be as quiet as possible or end up snack for the Defalna. As far as the Defalna were concerned, if there was blood, there was food. Flesh, even better. They loved brains, but also enjoyed the intestines. She supposed it was more what was inside the stomach and intestines. They so loved the ooey gooey goodness found there. Annika stuck her tongue out. Gonna make her lose her appetite if she kept it up. Annika was left by other Pheirgr who'd been let off by a fellow Sofrir. On the path of a horde of Defalna they sensed ahead. The Pheirgr were on it. She had no need. Not when the Undertakers were involved. She would keep her distance. Many avoided anything to do with the top hunters, the Undertakers, the Butcher. They earned those names. Didn't matter who crossed their path. Human, diseased, mean, nice, woman, child, man. Rumors abounded that Amaranthines even fell by their hand. Now them, on top of the Defalna, no thank you. She kept her distance from all of them. Amaranthines were better fighters. Had to be. They lived far longer than normal humans, so it meant a lot that they so easily took down Amaranthines as well as Defalna. Wasn't as if Defalna were some random weak thing to take on. Few dealt with the Undertakers until they came in. When that call came, "Where are the Undertakers?" everyone cleared the way, like a dam giving way to a river flood, and she was the first, becoming her namesake and disappearing into the wind. She'd never laid eyes on their faces and didn't want to. The large broad shoulders of the eldest from behind was the closest she'd even been. Like a wave they flowed in, striding with clear purpose. The way the eldest moved, sliding his long broad swords from his back, slicing through the Defalna in front of him. Swords near as large as his body. Swords only he held the strength to wield. One side saw, one side blade, that could cut steel like nothing. Didn't matter who stepped in front of them when the call came. When the name rang through the ranks of Pheirgr and Sofrir leading them, the crowd parted as a gate would a herd of animals, and all in front were consigned to death. Even fellow Sofrir had crossed those paths and hadn't come back. She wasn't much better off. If she could avoid, she would. She wasn't interested in crossing their path. Had plenty of reasons to fear them herself. The tallest was a man who'd taken on a group of Defalna himself and lived to tell the tale. Earned a crude mark on his mouth that puckered as it healed and left a permanent sneer. Probably used it to his benefit. Perfected the stay-away vibe. Part of what held Annika back. She wasn't needed there, but a horde was also an overload on her senses. This hunt had her nerves on high all day, primed for finding Defalna. More was in the air. The Defalna were agitated. She didn't know why, but she wasn't interested in encountering the Butcher after the battle settled for the day. Big Man was as bad as the Undertakers, but nobody knew where those other men stayed. The Butcher, however, stayed in the commune with her and the others. The others kept their distance. He didn't. Lately, the way the Butcher eyed Annika, she wasn't sure he'd let up on her even once the hunt was over. Didn't know his real name. She swore someone said he gave it up so he was permanently the Butcher, or Butch, as many referred to him. There was only so many of them left. The Sofrir more so. We are their guides. They are our shields. Without her guidance and others like her, what would happen? The Sofrir helped the Pheirgr find the Defalna. Often enough, the Defalna made it easy on them and would come out of hiding and attack them. But many Defalna were becoming more intelligent and adapting as human did to become amaranthan over time on other planets. When she slept at night, she wondered if others dealt with what they did. Was it just their planet? She hoped not. What sort of life would any of them have if the Defalna ever took over? It had become a wasteland. Who wants to see that happen? An inner alarm pinged her, jarring her. She'd been making her way down the street of old storefronts, so lost in thoughts that she reached the big old warehouse-style store without it occurring to her. That was a no-no. Could have gotten herself killed. Probably another reason they don't want to follow me about. She had a bad habit of losing time as of late and zoning out, knowing way better than to bypass her gut instincts. She read the tag. They used extended poles to mark the tags, constantly changing the marks because the Defalna were so intelligent these days. It was safer to change things up as often as possible. Not to mention there were do-no-gooders who would love to screw with those who hunted. Rare packs of humans survived on their own and went around causing havoc. Did they consider what they were messing with? She doubted it. Just cleared earlier today. Didn't feel right. It may have been cleared, but no. No, something else was going on. Everyone up the street disappeared. Another group far behind. Too far. Annika sighed. It was against the rules to check alone. It was wrong of Sofrir. Of her. She'd get a cut in her pay, which was already meager. A soft sound came from inside. Her brain attempted to understand what it was. Animal? No. Sounded as if it were a breath. There. It came again. What was that? Her brain struggled to comprehend the sound, gathering from all clues until it happened again, and finally pinged familiarity with something. A child. A child? Her brow furrowed. Once more she checked up the street, then down. Where were the other groups? She heard soft murmurs, but she couldn't yell for anyone. Shook her head and waved an arm. Hopefully someone saw it. Grumbling silently to herself, she stepped fully in view and hopped up and down, waving her arms. Nope, didn't seem anyone noticed. No return waves. A child. They were rare to find. What was a child doing out here? Once more the sound tugged her from inside. A flutter whispered across the back of her neck like butterfly wings. I'm gonna lose my pay. Her stomach rumbled in frustration at being empty, a small hiccup of fear as they held their sobs in check. They, not just one. Finally she had enough. She couldn't wait. Annika stepped closer to the rolling door and tested the bottom. It was unlocked. That was strange. If it were checked, certainly it wouldn't be so easily opened. Scanning the streets, she determined there was no time. Finally, she gingerly rolled the door up, attempting to go so slow she made no sound, then ducked under and in. It took a minute inside the warehouse to adjust to the shadowy interior. She blinked a few times, closed her eyes, then slowly reopened them. In front of her were cash registers with the long belts cracked or broken, covered in dust. A wide counter at the end for the groceries to be grabbed and packaged. Boxes abandoned beneath the stations, shoved here and there in old, dusty piles, covered in ancient webs. Parts of boxes were wilting and crumbling. The open and empty stall, where the worker stood for hours, sat silent and devoid of life. Dead bugs littered the floor where once the customer stood to check out. No conversations murmuring as workers called out. Customers chatted with friends and family, or the cashiers. No screeching of old carts moving along, or that one squeaky wheel that went haywire on a shopper. No thuds of groceries dropped, calls for the managers, children crying from boredom, people rushing to help one another. On the air remained the faint stench of mold and mildew clinging to leftover food in the food court to her far left, long since gone to other senses, not Annika's. To her far right, where once florists placed beautiful bouquets, nothing but dried twigs and cellophane bits fallen to the floor. Dust from dried leaves crushed into nothing. A layer of dust covered everything. Near a broken bud vase at the corner of the inlet shop was a broken skull, crushed. Residue from the war that raged through here. A snuff of air swept her toward a register just a few to the left. Faint whispers came from far in the back that she had zero plans to check on. Either de Fauna or others attempting to hide. She didn't know. Wasn't going to push her already bad luck. Not at the present moment. That wasn't why she entered this space. Cautiously inching to the stall, she peeked in. Two small heads huddled together, clothes dusty from the space they'd taken refuge in. The brother swiped tears from his sister's face. Annika's movement made him raise his head. When he spotted Annika, he sucked in a breath. His first, very smart of him, instinct was to raise a small tuning fork he found in threat. The small body bunched, fixing to drag his sister out of there and take off. Annika quickly lowered to her knees, raising her hands. No de Fauna would pause and slowly settle to the floor. They'd simply go on the attack, and these defenseless little bodies wouldn't be able to do a thing about a fully turned. Not even with the tuning fork that seemed to be a fairly decent weapon if you asked her. Jam it into the throat of one if they got the chance, or another bad guy, and they might be able to do a bit of damage. Jam it in the knee, leg, arm, something. Poke an eye at the least. Curly-haired golden baby sister snuffed and wiped tears from her dirty, exhausted face, smearing streaks. Her sentinel brother didn't trust Annika, and she didn't blame him. "What are you doing here?" she whispered, attempting to gain traction on where the other noises were coming from. The boy, too, noted where she sensed a presence from. He kept his voice near whisper. "Mama told us to hide." Annika's brow furrowed. Their mother was here? Slowly her head turned left and right, without her fully being cognizant of it. When it hit her, she rose to her feet, facing a palm to the floor, telling them in silence not to move. The boy, gathering she meant them no harm, slid his arm around his sister, tucking baby girl closer. Their mother felt as if a bunch of spiders crawled over her arms. Their mother. Every time the words moved through her mind, her nerves tightened. The hairs on her scalp tingled. She was infected. Turning. Again, this is Chapter 1 from Sofrir and Pheirgr of Atalantius Omega 3, which is the 6th book in the Guardian of Life world, a sci-fantasy world with a touch of horror. If you are completely new to this world or book, I thought I would go into a few of these things, like the de Fauna, What exactly are the quote-unquote Defauna? Well, the name came from my playing with all sorts of Norwegian words, reverse words, and far more until I came up with the Fallen, Defauna, a mashup of letters from those words. I don't now remember how I ended up with those words, but the term fit, I like it, it felt right, so it became them. This is the first time they are truly labeled as anything too. The Defauna exist in many of the Guardian of Life World books, and we especially get to see them pop up when Haley first encounter them in Daughter of a Red Planet. Then Ellie deals with them hunting her all her life in the following books, which are Ancient Scars, Under Empty Stars, and this one they appear next, Sofrir and Pheirgr of Atalantius Omega 3. There is a book before Sofrir and after Under Empty Stars called Creations of the Galaxy that you don't get to see them. Creations is sort of outside the main world while still being very much a part of it. Those characters spend more time in space and on the move, which is why we probably don't see the Defauna. What exactly are they, though? They are what I hint at when I discuss them eating brains, but also intestines. The easiest way to describe them are, of course, zombies, but they may closely resemble more the type you'd see in the movie World War Z, where they hunt people, they're fast, smart. There's so much more, though. Even Annika mentions it. She is essentially a high-powered empath who has tuned into the world around her in advanced ways. Like in the other books in this world, people evolve to survive the planet they're on. For Annika, being naturally sensitive is heightened to a point she is known as a Sofrir, those who are tuned into the Defauna and the planet. Annika mentions how the Defauna are getting smarter all the time, so even the people who hunt them have to outsmart them, or they're going to be killed. They are ruled by a disease that infects them, so that they aren't necessarily dead, though they aren't necessarily alive either. They kill and eat their victims as sustenance. The addition of eating brains is more of a nod to old zombie movies, but also those things that mention there are parts of the brain monsters will go for. I can't think of the movie specifically that uses that as a play, or book maybe, that it hunts only a certain part of the brain. Well, technically I didn't think of that when I was creating them. More simply that they are an advanced form of what we'd know as a zombie. I use that term only to give an idea of what they are. They aren't zombies. They are more. Just like the Sofrir. Just like the Pheirgr. The Pheirgr are like the Sofrir, an advanced form of a human who has heightened strength, but with that often comes with a lack of compassion. You'll see it in later chapters as the top killers prove again and again that they lack compassion. It's a must in the world they live. However, some also prove that their compassion may far surpass everyone else's. It only appears on the outside that they don't. Because on that planet, it's about survival. The planet is incredibly beautiful, too. I'd dreamt of the mountains you come upon soon after the first chapter. The beautiful colors that make it appear like a fantasy world. Everything looks beautiful, too. But as we see in the chapter above, though the planet itself is beautiful with an almost ethereal beauty to it. The inhabitants are suffering. There are diseased humans attempting to hunt and kill them, and there always seems to be more and more out there, no matter how many are killed. And the landscape in many areas is dead, dying, drying up, without food and water. Even animals are scarce. So as beautiful as the planet is on the outside, it's hiding dark and dangerous secrets below. Literally. This is a story and characters I will continue and can't wait to explore more with. After all, they have a meeting coming up with another group similar to them, but also they're total opposites. What will happen when they converge is the question. More when the epitome of death meets the epitome of life. More to come. Thank you for reading and subscribing, or listening in this case. I know how valuable your time is, so it means so much that you're here, and I'm beyond grateful you chose to spend this time with me. What are your thoughts? Engage with me and start a conversation. Just don't be rude about it. And as always, your shares are so incredibly appreciated. Share with anyone you think may enjoy it. Word of mouth is the best form of expanding the reach, so this reaches the eyes and ears of whoever may enjoy it. My donation link, if you'd like to support this and help keep it going, is ko-fi.com/Kimberly Sue Iverson. That's ko-fi.com/Kimberly Sue Iverson. Every little bit helps. So thank you for your generosity and for the donation I just received. Remember, apparition weavers, everyone is fighting battles inside nobody can see. Who are you willing to see today? And who are you willing to let see you today? If you'd like a chance for your story to be read and featured, get in touch at stories2read@KimberlySueIverson.com. A new episode and blog is dropped every Wednesday on KimberlySueIverson.com or on YouTube under Kimber Bites. That's KimberBites, Kimber Bites. And don't forget to check out my Ream subscription page. Another chapter is up. I am releasing Guardians of the Void chapter by chapter over on Ream right now. I will be releasing my Priestess World as well soon, long before the public gets the books. You'll be able to read the chapters as I write them and help with the world. You'll get to read extra scenes that may not make the cut either. This is still being thought out on how I will, so they haven't been posted yet, but stay tuned. Also, that world is still in progress, but I have written almost 3 books. I'm nearing the end of the 3rd one. That's the one that when you follow me on social media, if you see the updates, that's the one it's about. If I actually do some writing and get all excited, that's typically the world I'm writing in. So check out reamstories.com/Kimberly Sue Iverson. That's reamstories.com/KimberlySueIverson. reamstories.com/Kimberly Sue Iverson. That link also will be in the description box below, unless I completely forget to add it, at which point you can remind me.